It's Tour Guide Dave again with the next episode of my virtual spooky tour here at Dundonald Castle. And I've been looking forward to this one because I'm going to introduce you to probably my favourite character, my favourite paranormal personality, if I could call him that. He certainly seems to be the one that more people pick up on than any other. And he's been described to me as being an aggressive personality. I don't think he's nasty, but I think he's aggressive, and I think that's because of the job that he's doing. He certainly seems to have a very powerful presence, judging by the reactions that I get from people when they become aware of him. And in this first photograph, we're pretty much stood where he is all the time, so we're pretty much in his space here. So just to give you an idea of where we are in the castle at the moment, to the right of us, just out of shot, you might be able to see right at the bottom right of the picture, there's a modern concrete step. That's the bottom of the spiral staircase that takes you up to the top floor where the old fellow with the beard is. And behind us is the prison where I had the episode with the rat and the shuffling footsteps. And then looking forward through the doorway, the walkway that you can see, that's the direction you would come from if you're doing a tour in the castle. So you'd be walking towards us if you were doing the tour. And it's often just as we come up to the doorway that I get very strange, very definite reactions from people. Some people will sort of look around a little bit just as they get to the doorway, and then they'll say something like, "Do you have any ghosts in your castle?" Another time I can remember quite clearly, there was a couple of guys came up, they were builders or something like that. They're working on a local building site, but they came up full around the castle, and one of them got as far as the entrance of the doorway, and he suddenly stopped. He turned around, he looked me straight in the eye, and he said, "You do know your castle's haunted, don't you?" And the other thing that sometimes happens is people will suddenly refuse to go through that doorway. And these are people that have bought tickets, they paid the entrance fee, they'll get as far as that doorway, they'll suddenly stop, and then they'll leave the rest of their group behind, and they'll say, I'm not going to go through that doorway, I'll just wait for you down the bottom. And then they leg it along the walkway and then down the stairs. They don't even want to wait in the vicinity of that doorway, so there's something there that these people don't like. And in fact, it's in the vicinity of the doorway that I had rather a nasty experience actually happened to me in the middle of a tour. So if you look at the photograph, immediately in front of you, you can see there's an open metal gate, and then just behind that there's a brighter area. Well, that's a window. That's a window embrasure. There's quite a lot of stone robbed away from there, and quite a lot of rough stone. I think it's been a stone seat or something. And I'm taking a group on a tour one day, and I'm actually stood in that window embrasure, and the people that I'm taking around are on the wooden walkway. And then all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, I suddenly felt really, really ill. I couldn't catch my breath. I was trying to take huge lungfuls of breath while I'm still talking to the people, and it was like it was having no effect. It's like I wasn't breathing oxygen in, it's like I was breathing something else. I was becoming lightheaded, as you can imagine. My legs were shaking. I felt like I couldn't support my own weight. And even my vision was going. I was getting tunnel vision. It was like I was looking down a slowly receding tube of light, and I was losing colour perception as well. Everything was going monochrome. And I thought, oh no, if I pass out, I'm going to pass out. I'm sure I'm going to pass out. If I pass out here, I'm going to come a right cropper, because I know I'm surrounded by stone, some jagged bits and that. So I sort of casually as I could walked across and leant against that wooden banister that you can see, and I thought, well, if the worst comes to the worst, I can slide down here gracefully and probably won't do myself too much harm. The thing is, the second I stepped out of that window embrasure, I felt fine. It was there 1 minute and then it was gone the next. Some people that I've mentioned that to, they've put a paranormal sort of slant on that. They said perhaps you were standing in somebody's space, they wanted you to shift out of the way. Other people have suggested that maybe they're just draining my energy to get a power boost for themselves. I don't know. Actually, what I can tell you is that evening, around about 7 o'clock, I suddenly hit a brick wall, I just literally ran out of energy and had to go to sleep. So hey, maybe there's something in that. It's true. Anyway, I'm digressing. I need to tell you about this guy that stands in the doorway. And I think possibly my first experience of this guy was the first season when I was working in the castle. And at that time, we used to shut the castle at the end of October. And this is late October. It's been a really, really quiet day. Hardly anybody's been up. And I'm getting a bit bored, so I thought for a leg stretch, what I'll do is I'll take a walk around the outside of the castle. So I'm outside the castle for about 5 minutes or so. And then when I come back in, of course, I don't know if anybody's come into the castle while I've been outside. I've been around the back. So I'm just waiting for anybody just down the bottom of the castle, and I hear all of a sudden somebody walking along that walkway that you can see. And my first thought is, maybe someone's come in the castle to have a look around while I was out. I wonder if they want me to, to give them a tour or whatever. And I look up to the balcony, and there's nobody on it, but I can hear somebody walking. I can actually follow their progress along that walkway, and they're walking away from us in this photograph towards the light area at the far end on the right. So not the big window, but on the right hand side there's another light area, and that's the original front door of the castle. That's the first floor, the main front door, and that's where the sound stops. Now, one of the things we do in the castle is we open it for weddings, and they generally take place on the ground floor. There's a big open space there, so that's a nice place for the service. And there's a wedding in progress one day. Now, I'm not in the castle, I didn't see this, but Kirstine, my manager, and also my wife Anne, they were in the castle helping with all the preparations and that. And Kirstine said while the actual service was in progress, she noticed somebody walking along the balcony from where we are, walking away towards the front door. And she'd planned when he came down the stairs at the end of that walkway to just have a chat with him, see how he's doing. But she said he never came down. Nobody ever came down that staircase, and that's the only way down from the balcony. And the other thing was odd, she described him as wearing clothes that looked like the jacket you wear when we have school visits. And one of the things we do is we have workshops for schools, and the people that are helping with the workshop, we dress up as characters who would have been in or around the castle at the time. So we're wearing medieval clothes, and what she described was him wearing something called a gambeson, which is a thick sort of padded jacket that pretty much everybody would have worn. It's a general purpose sort of jacket. It's a bit of padding, bit of protection from weapons, and it keeps you warm, and that's the sort of thing that I wear. And she said that's what this guy was wearing. He was wearing medieval clothes. All right, now one of the things that I do 2 or 3 times a year is I do a live sort of spooky tour, if you like. I take people around the castle. I'm doing pretty much what I'm doing here, but we actually walk around the castle and visit the actual places. And I'm doing one of the tours one day, and I'm standing in that window embrasure again, and I'm actually telling people, there's a group of about 15 people on the walkway, and I'm telling them the story about when I was feeling poorly. And while I'm doing that, there's a chat. One of the visitors, he says to his wife, "Quick, get a photograph of the doorway." And so she takes a photograph on her phone. And I'm just about to tell people the story about what happens around this doorway, the reactions that I get from people, and the chap that I heard walking along the balcony and Kirstine saw walking along. And for some reason, I thought, I'll get out of his space and we'll go back down the stairs and I'll tell them when we're on the ground floor. So that's what I did. I'm just about to start to tell this story, and the chap who had the photograph taken, he said, when we're up on the balcony and you said we're going to go downstairs, I was really pleased because I was starting to feel quite uncomfortable. And he said it's because all the time we're up there and I was telling the story, he said there was a man stood in the doorway, and that's what he tried to get a photograph of. And he showed me the photograph, and there's just the doorway. There's a lady who wasn't connected to them who's stood in the doorway. She's in the photograph, and he said he was looking over her shoulder, but he's not in the photograph. I said, "Oh, that's pretty cool. Can you describe him?" And he said, "Yeah." He said he was about 50 years old. He had light brown hair. He said it was a little bit long. It was tucked behind his ears, looked like it needed cutting. and he was just staring ahead. He wasn't looking at you, i.e. me, when I'm talking. He was just looking straight down along the room, basically. So for that reason, we call this guy the guard. I mean, if you think like a Buckingham Palace gardener, just looking straight ahead, not reacting, that's what this guy seems to be doing. And just as a little sort of afterthought to that, I was taking a guy around the castle one day, and he claimed to have psychic skills, if you like. And unbidden by me, I hadn't mentioned anything. He said, we were on the ground floor, but he pointed up at this doorway and he said, there's a guy up there and he is just stood, not reacting. I can't get him to react to me. He said he's on duty. He's taking his job seriously. He's on duty. He's guarding that doorway. And I guess that sort of makes sense, really, because the main hall, the one that we're looking into on the photograph, that's sort of the semi-public area of the castle. That would have been where the king would have held banquets. It would have been where you'd slept if you were a visitor to the castle, just want some food and shelter. And then the other side of the doorway where we are in the photograph, that takes you into the more private spaces, so the staircase up to the king's quarters. So if you're going to be guarding that doorway, you're going to be making damn sure you do a good job, because you don't want anybody getting past you who shouldn't be there. And it isn't just humans that seem to react to this guy. I've had on 2 occasions, I've seen dogs react to something that they can see that I can't. So I just want to change views now to another photograph, and now we're looking back towards where we were. So the doorway on the left in the distance, that's where we've been stood. And so one day this chap comes in with a couple of small dogs. We allow dogs in the castle as long as they're under control. And this guy's got 2 small white dogs, like West Highland Terrier sort of dogs. And they go up onto the balcony with him. And one of the dogs is quite happy. It follows its owner along the walkway towards that doorway. But the second dog gets to about where we are in the photograph, and it will not move. It would not go any further. And there's nothing this guy could do to entice it along the walkway. And it was absolutely terrified of something that it could see. You hear people say that someone was scared stiff. This dog was literally scared stiff. The guy had to pick it up to move it, and all 4 limbs were stuck straight out. It was as stiff as a board, like a stuffed toy. And he had to take it out of the castle, and he had to literally carry it out the castle. I saw him later, and he said he went down the hill and he put it in his car, and then when he went back to leave, the dog was still staring at the castle. He just could not let it go. And I had a second reaction from another dog, quite a violent reaction actually. This was a big dog. It was like a Doberman. It wasn't a Doberman, but that sort of size, large, smooth-haired dog. And it was a nice enough dog. When he came in, he came over and said hello to me. We had a little play, and then his owner took him up on the balcony, and I'd said to him, you might not get him up the spiral staircase. A lot of dogs don't like the spiral staircase, just because of the way it's designed. And he said, oh well, I'll see what we can do. And he came down a couple of minutes later, and he just said, yeah, it went about halfway up, and then he didn't want to go any further. And he's walking back along the balcony towards us, and he gets about where we are, and that main front door was just out of shot to the left. And the dog at this point has really been quite happy. And all of a sudden he spins round and he stares at that doorway, and his hackles have risen, and he lets out this really, really deep growl. I've never heard a dog make that noise. It came from way down inside the dog, and it was sort of, take one more step and I'll rip your face off. It was that sort of noise that he made, and the guy had a real struggle to get it down the staircase. This dog was completely spooked. So, is this a nasty piece of work we're talking about? Actually, no, I don't think it is. I can empathise with this guy. If he is a guard, my background is military, and I've spent many an hour guarding places, and later as an NCO as the guard commander, so the guy in charge of the guards. And what you need for your guard to do is to be aggressive. Your guards have to take control of a situation. If they're approached by people, a potential threat, you have to take command, you have to control the situation, and there has to carry an implicit threat of sudden and serious violence. And I don't suppose the essence of guarding has changed much in the last 600 years. So that's what I think our boy's about. I think he's just being a good guard, doing his job properly. Now, just very quickly, I want to tell you about a second guy who's the polar opposite to the guard. And even from my early days working at the castle, people who were there at the time told me stories about there's a guy who's supposed to be a bit of a joker, a practical joker, who wanders around the castle and will play tricks on people. He'll look around the side of a doorway and then shoot back in and pop up somewhere else. So he's having a bit of fun with people. And I think he's popped up once during one of the school visits as well, because just as it was ending and the kids were leaving the castle, a little girl, she's just outside the castle, and she points up at the front door and she says, "Oh, I think I've seen a ghost." "Oh yeah, right, what did you see?" "Oh well, I saw a man walk across the doorway and he did this," and she made a shape with her body. So if you can imagine standing on your right leg with your left leg stuck out to the side and your arms leaning off to the right, so you're like a goalkeeper diving to the right. She made that shape. And then some time later, a year or so later, I'm locking up the castle and I can hear some people down on the ground floor. Now I know they hadn't bought tickets because the shop would have stopped selling them by then, so I think they just want a quick freebie look around. So when I get down to the ground floor, I tell them, "You'll need to leave." And it's a young mum and two small lads. And one of the lads says, "Can we just run around in this bit until you lock up?" So I said, "Okay, you've got about 30 seconds. As soon as I turn that light off, I want you to go." And they were as good as gold. And I followed them straight out, and I've got to lock the front door. There's a wooden door I lock, and then there's two padlocks on a gate. And it takes about 30 seconds. While I'm doing this, the two boys are running around in the courtyard just outside the castle. And then just as I turn back towards them, one of the lads, he's pointing up at the doorway again, and he says, "Have you just been on the other levels?" And I said, "Well, yeah, you saw me come down." "No, just now, since we've come out of the castle." I said, "No, I just followed you straight out." "Why?" I said, "Well, somebody's just walked across that doorway." "Oh yeah?" "Yeah, and he was doing this." And he made exactly the same shape as that girl made. So there you go. Make of that what you will. I think that'll do for today. So stay safe, stay healthy, be alert. Your country needs alerts.